All right, hi. So today is the second episode of the KAG Podcast, and today we have Sue, our CEO, and Andrew, digital marketer, and myself, Steph, and we're going to be talking about the impact of mental health on, like, the impact of talking about mental health in regards to what we do as an organisation and within the community, and then just the wider society, and what that can do, and how that can help people. So Sue, what would you have to say about the impact in which KAG has on the wider community in regards to, like, mental health? And
Okay, well, I think when the charity started and when I first started, people with mental health problems were always locked away in institutions because the Mental Health Act is a public safety act. It's not a enabling act like later acts like the Care Act and the Mental Capacity Act. So when I actually first started working for KAG, I used to have to go and see people in institutions where they had been incarcerated for the last 30, 40 years. And often it was because they were a little bit different from society. And then we were set up as those institutions were closing down and started actually working with people to have a voice and a choice. So hopefully always, and it's something that I've always tried to do in my own casework and also in the services I develop and design, that, just because someone has a label of mental health, it doesn't mean that they can't play an active part in society. Whereas now all the different projects we have, there's only one of them actually in a hospital. All the others are outside in the person's own house, or they come here, and we're doing projects now enabling people to take more of an active part in society, like the mentoring, the befriending, the independent visitors, as well as the advocacy that we do for people with debts and benefits, making them be able to, take control, etc. So I think there's been a massive change since I've been working here. The fact that, a mental health diagnosis in itself doesn't mean that you have to be locked away. You can be in society. And I think the impact that KAG has had is by putting people with mental health problems in the centre and resolving their issues, and that's a huge impact because they're taken seriously, they're given a voice. A lot of research, and also one of our previous employees who unfortunately died about 8 years ago, Tony Taylor, he actually wrote a book called Reclaiming Identities for when people did have mental health needs way back. I mean, we're not talking about centuries back, we're actually talking about sort of just 1970s, 1980s. Often they were put in institutions because they were poor, they had illegitimate children, basically they weren't what society wanted, so they were put away. And often there is stories, especially when I used to work for people in West Park, that their birth certificates and their identities were taken away. Their family was told that they died. So when the institutions closed, they were reclaiming their identity. And I think now the work that we do, we don't see that as often, thankfully, but we are making that impact. We're giving them that voice again. And that impact.
Yeah, I agree. But in regards to more of the younger generation, like what we've done recently, we've been seeing people from universities and trying to help them, in regards to, like, what they might do after school and how that might impact their mental health and stuff like that. It's like the impact of, or the importance rather, of talking about mental health within the society. And I think what do you think about the
Well, I think
importance of it?
I think it's really important with dealing with young people, because we've often, for most of our history, just dealt with, say, adults really, and it's an adults that kind of, you know, sort of middle-aged to elderly. When we started doing work under the Mental Capacity Act, I think we started working more with a much older generation, and I think it's important that we work with younger people, because I think the pandemic probably has impacted that generation more than anything else, because there they were just about to go to university or whatever, and then the whole world stopped. And, you know, I think because they say people are adaptable, but I do think that younger people, because you always have this generation thing, oh, it was different in our day, we had to do X, Y and Z, whereas younger people, I think, have a lot of pressure from sort of, because they're at school longer than everyone else was, because, you know, you start school at 3 now and finish when you're 18, whereas beforehand that was a choice. Lots of things have gone online, which is very useful and brilliant, but it does stop that face-to-face contact, which I think is important. And I also think there is stuff for younger people if maybe the mental health has got really serious, like CAMS, but I don't think there's anything around for preventative or talking for people and before it gets too bad, because there's an assumption, the fact that they're young, they're enjoying themselves, they can go out, they can do X, Y and Z, and you don't know what's in people's minds. So I think it's important that younger people is a really important role that we should be involved in, to help people not get to the point where later on they are having to need those secondary services. I mean, it's almost the flip side. I think also the work that we do important for older people who are isolated, who are not in a care home. I mean, the work we do in the care home is also equally important, but someone in a care home has got that company, whether they want it or not. If you're isolated in your own home, you're going to need secondary services as well before long, even if it's just someone to talk to. I mean, there was the report about 3 Christmases ago was a woman on her own over Christmas, and she kept ringing up the speaking clock, so there was someone else's voice that she could hear during the day. So if you get to that, and also younger people, why are we assuming that every younger person's got a load of network of friends?
I agree. Like, I think during lockdown, I think that was such a challenge for a lot of people, but younger people, like, especially because so many, didn't have obviously can't go and, meet people, and I think that really affects people more than they think, and are, like, still, recovering now from that.
Yeah, because I think if you think about it, when you're younger, you go to school and you're used to that environment, aren't you? You're used to that structure, you're used to seeing those people, you're used to having your life in a particular way, whereas suddenly with the pandemic, you have to start making a lot of choices on your own without that skills that you would have got. I mean, the work that we've done for the last couple of years over at Kingston University for the NCS summer programme, to me, I think they're people that have, probably come on after the pandemic, but even they say, they don't know, there's the choices, they don't know what's available, there is a lot of pressure because they're always sort of catching up on stuff.
Not everyone knows the support that's there for people, and a lot of people during lockdown I don't think had support that they thought they needed, because what you might find out is there's fine when it's allowed outside, but then if they're stuck at home, you don't know who said person's first of all living with, if with anyone.
Yeah, and then even the extended period of time of being isolated, then, when things open up, it's often a struggle to regain that confidence to like be part of a group and be social.
But
and
also
like,
there's a kind of like a sort of, I suppose, a rite of passage, isn't it? That you go with your friends, you do your GCSEs, you do your A-levels, you go to your different universities, and you share that all, and that helps you, and that didn't happen. And I think lots of people missed out on those sort of like end bits of university.
There's also Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Where it's like if you're inside for so long, then you go back into the worst, but like what you have before.
It's a big shock, I think. Personally, for me, when I was at uni, like we finished, the lockdown hit like as I was in my last term, so we didn't have any ability to like meet. You know, obviously you can go out, so our you know, time there was cut short, and we didn't have the goodbye, I guess, or the closure that you want. And then 2 years later, we had our graduation, and that it's you know, it's different.
Yeah. It's totally false.
Yeah.
I mean, because obviously there was no lockdown when I was at university, but I still found the graduation a little bit strange because it was about 6 months afterwards. But at least it was in the same year that you finished.
I mean, I didn't even have a graduation.
Yeah.
Because no one in my class really, well, there wasn't really any sort of like want to go to a graduation after lockdown, because it's been like 4 or 5 months. So it's like, it's past, everyone's like working or doing something else, like, it's just, I think
there's a lot that changes.
Life just, everyone got used to being at home and then working from home as well. So not a lot of people want to go back to said in-person work.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one thing, I mean, if you can say, there's 2 things about the pandemic I think's been extremely good. One is the fact that it has enabled people to work from home if they want to, which does give them that work-life balance a lot better, and that's good for everyone's mental health. The second thing is people are starting to talk about mental health, and not just in the professions like the psychiatric world. It's you know, people's mental health now is as important sometimes, and as important in conversations as your physical health.
Yeah.
And I think that has been brilliant.
Even more sometimes, because your mental health will affect your physical.
Yeah, exactly.
It affects everything, you know, when you're mentally not, you're struggling. Sometimes all you want is someone to just ask you, like,
okay?
How are you? You know, and actually mean that, because I think that gets thrown around quite a lot. Just how are you, and they're not prepared for, you know, an answer that's quite deep, I guess.
Yeah.
Like people don't really engage in those conversations.
Not enough people also will give you a deep answer.
No.
Yeah.
If you ask someone, they're more likely to go ahead and just give you a basic term of "I'm fine."
How are you?
Yeah.
And not really want to know the answer.
Where they actually are struggling, because there's not really a society that's built up for people where that's normal.
Yeah, and I think it's important to always show, like, you know, compassion and understanding, and be kind like that.
I mean, going back onto that, for every project we do, we always have, for every project that I've set up, there's outcomes. And there's practical outcomes, like how many people attended the workshop, how many people that we've got housing benefits, etc., etc. But there's also what's known as the soft outcomes, is how many people now feel involved, how many people feel listened to, how many people feel confident, and they're just as important. And how we collect that information is good, because it shows the wider impact that we actually do for people. I mean, we can say, there's 8 people came to, say, the Money Buddy project, and out of those 8 people, we resolved all their debts. But as also, those eight people, we also helped them feel more confident and able to do stuff, which is important. I think we need to show that as well. But young people, I think, is an important area we need to develop as much as we do everything else.
Yeah.
Because I do think there is an assumption that if people are younger, they're more resilient and can get on with things.
Most mental health issues actually start when you're younger, compared to when you're older.
Yeah.
So.
And I think even in school and like stuff like that, like there isn't much. I mean, I don't know what it's like now, but from when I was in school, I didn't know what like anxiety was, or you know how do you revise for a test that you know they judge you on that, and then that your future is kind of based off that start. You get that, you know, that grade that opens all those doors for you, and if you don't do as well, and it might not be because you're lazy or like you're really trying hard, but it's just not working for you. And I feel like a lot of them don't sort of cater for kids or young people who might need that extra support, or you know might be dealing with stuff personally.
I think it's the individuality. People are categorised. There's no individual process for each person. Like you can have a room full of 20 people, and there's and they say, like, for example, we do go on a hospital ward that is a long-stay institution, and you've got, say, 10 people on that ward, and all of them have to go through the same process of their leave being looked at and their leave being taken away because something has happened. Yeah, 9 out of those 10 because something did happen and the leave does need to be made. But that one person who just was late for 2 minutes coming back from leave, not looking at everything else, there's no individuality. And the same way as I don't think there's individuality for younger people, there is this sort of, the minute you set school as an infant at 5 years old or 3 now, your career, you're there till you're 18.
You have to be.
And you have to be.
There's no choice. And
there's lots of reasons why you can't be, or, you know, sitting behind a school desk is not ideal for you. So I think we do need to do more work with younger people to prevent further mental health needs. They are a vulnerable group because of their age.
There's also a lot of bullying in schools.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't actually realise, because I think a lot of teachers aren't well versed in what is bullying.
And
because bullying can be seen as a lot of things, and they probably give advice that's wrong. For example, bullying can be anything from, you could seem like your friends, but you're not. Like in regards to like, teachers would give advice if that person's taking the mickey out of you. Oh, it's because they like you. Or if a teacher isn't really aware of the situation, they'll get taken the wrong way, whereas there's not really a support system for kids to explain things, because teachers can be very biased.
And then we have the big issue of, you know, kids have access to social media and you know, cyberbullying and all of that bad stuff, and it's so easy to access. That's the thing. Like, you know,
there's a lot of damage.
Young kids now, like, you know, year 7s are much more sort of advanced for like in terms of technology and like the access to the internet and more things than like I think when we were younger. It you know, we weren't. It was sort of progressing, but I think now it's so in your face.
That also affects people's like social skills as well. Rather than speaking in person, they're more likely to be isolated, stay at home. So there's not enough in regards to like teaching people it's like life skills. Because if you go to school, they teach you things which are curriculum, but then not actually something which is going to be useful to them when they leave, say, their secondary school, go to uni, or like budgeting, or for example, if you need to learn how to, I don't know, how taxes work, or
or like, you know, how many questions.
I don't think so. I mean, when I was at senior school, we had a sort of 2-hour session each week, and it was literally on bank account taxes, how to apply for a job, CVs and everything else. But that's gone out the window for what I understand happens in schools now, because I suppose the difference was when I was at school, you didn't have to stay on till you was 18. You was expected to at my school. Over your dead body were you not meant to.
Well, what you would find is people usually stay with their parents till late 20s, compared to then it was earlier, so you had to learn the life skills. Now you're more safe and sheltered, which can be bad, but I think a lot of high schools, they teach you things which they think you will need later in life. So it's like, for example, no employee really is going to look at what GCSE you got in citizenship or what you got in art unless you're applying for them jobs.
No.
All they will look at is experience.
Yeah, it's more the experience,
And
but in order to get experience, you need to,
Which brings us why I think the mentoring that we're trying to do for younger people, because especially for a particular age group who are not in employment, education or training, we can do those things like gaps in CVs and experience to try and get people on a different path. I mean, there's no problem staying living with parents if that is a safe environment and you feel happy with it. But the same way as in lockdown, not stay in toxic, abusive relationships just because there is no way out. The same way as we have to do the work that we do for what was on the Labyrinth project, which was the vulnerable women. That's again looking at giving them the same skills of budgeting, applying for benefits, housing, or even looking for work to give them independence, the same as younger people.
Yeah.
I think as a charity that has at the centre people's voice and a choice and well-being, we need to make sure that everything we do, there is something that's there so someone's life can get better.
Yeah.
I
agree.
So that's what we do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's a wrap for today. But you can follow us on Instagram and check out our website. Yeah.